Let's take a look at how you navigate a song on the BR1600. When you power up the BR1600, it will default to the last song that you were using. If you want to change that, you need to do that from the menu. You press Utility, Song, and Select. You can select a song either by using the cursor keys or the time value wheel. In this case, we're going to select the demo song that comes with the BR1600. If I Fall, you highlight it and press Go. In terms of the LCD screen, you get the title of the track in the top left hand corner. The small padlock indicates that this particular song is locked and can't be edited. If you want to change that, you can do that from the menu. Next, along the top, we have the number of the marker. So this is at the start of the song, so obviously 001. Following that, we have the measure number, followed by the beat, and hours, minutes, seconds, frames, and subframes. The effects display tells you what insert effect is currently applied. This has no effect on playback because it's an insert effect. Below that, you have the name of the marker, currently set at intro, the tempo of the song, and the chord map. Now, the chord map is used if you are using the onboard bass rhythm, which requires you to set up the chords for the song so that it can follow along. Below that, we've got the remaining time for the hard drive. This can be changed from the menu. If you go to Utility, System, and then scroll down to the remaining time, you can change it from time to megabytes to percent. Now, this is set per song and is not a global setting. And you can see now it's changed to 90% of the hard drive remaining. In the center of the screen, we have the level display. On the left, you have the levels for the inputs, and on the right, the recorded tracks. And on the far right, the output level. If you press play, we'll see the levels of the individual tracks. Now you can see these are the individual tracks, and this is the overall output. If I drop the output there, you can see the track levels still remain, but the output goes to 0. You can control all of the individual levels via the faders. So if we move these two up, you'll see those.
I can't take it anymore. I awake, or have I won? Don't see.
The V-Tracks control which of the tracks will actually play. You can access that by pressing the V-Track button, and that takes you to the V-Track screen. This is a representation of how the V-Tracks are arranged on the BR1600. You have the 16 tracks shown across the top of the page, and directly below each track are the 16 virtual tracks. The diagram here shows one possible combination of V-Tracks that you could use for either recording or playback. You can pick any one of the 16 V-Tracks that are available per track. Let's use an example and say that you've mic'd up a drum kit and recorded 8 separate tracks, in this case all using Virtual Track 16. You can then mix these and then bounce them down to a single stereo pair, shown here as track 15 and 16 on Virtual Track 16. Now this means that you have 8 tracks that now only occupy 2 tracks. This frees up track 1 to 8 to be reused, along with track 9 to 14, which are still free. Now, bouncing tracks is not a new thing. It's been done for decades on tape-based multitracks, but the big advantage of doing it on the BR1600 is that you don't need to delete or record over any tracks to reuse them. You have 256 virtual tracks available, which gives you the possibility to record songs with literally dozens of tracks without having to delete anything. You're not limited to just using the same V-Tracks for a bounce. You can pick any of the available V-Tracks from the 16 available, and you can bounce down to either a single mono track or a stereo pair. You can see from the illustration that we have 15 mono tracks and 2 stereo tracks all mixed down to just 2 stereo pairs. That leaves tracks 1 to 12 free for playback, and there's 233 V-Tracks left for recording. It gives you a lot of options for your songs. This shows an example of what you might see on the V-Track screen of the BR1600. You've got the tracks across the top, and the 16 V-Tracks are shown below each track in 2 rows of 8. The V-Tracks that are currently selected to play or record and already contain data are shown with a full block. V-Tracks that are currently selected and have no recorded data are shown with a dash. V-Tracks that contain recorded data are shown with an empty block, and V-Tracks that have no recorded data are shown with a dot. The triangle to the left of track 9 and 10 indicates that that was the last track used for mastering, and it is set as default to burn to CD. Now this is only a reference and can be changed when you burn the CD, or you can change it on the V-Track screen beforehand by highlighting the master V-Track number and then using the time value wheel to adjust it. If we look at a track listing for this particular song, you can see that track 1 and 2 have 3 different choices for the vocals. Track 3 and 4 are for vocal effects, 5 and 6 are for the guitars, 7 and 8 are for a second guitar, and track 9 and 10 is for guitar effects. Track 11 and 12 is set to default to the drum loops, and there's also a recorded copy of those loops recorded as audio. Track 13 and 14 is for recorded bass, and track 15 and 16 is a synth. You can navigate the V-Tracks in one of 3 ways. You can highlight the track number and then use the scroll wheel to select a track, or you can use the cursor keys to go left and right to select a track, or you can push the track buttons below the faders to jump to a particular track. Now if you want to change a V-Track, you simply highlight the track you want to change and then use the scroll wheel to select the various tracks. If we go back to the main screen and just drop the levels of all of the tracks apart from 1 and 2, you see there's a description for it, which in this case is a delayed vocal left and right. If we press play,
Take it anymore. I'm broken.
and then we can switch between
Crying when
to the second V-Track,
I'm gone.
which is a doubled vocal,
Will they forgive for what I've done?
and the third choice is a dry vocal track.
Is there no metal in my gun?
Now the same thing with track 5 and 6.
I taste the
You've got guitars on 5 and 6, distorted guitars, we can switch them to acoustic guitars. And lastly, to clean guitars.
no metal in my gun.
Now you can only have one V-Track play at any one time, but you have 16 V-Tracks available per track that you can use to store any audio you like. If we go back to the primary screen, playback is controlled by navigation down the bottom left hand corner of the unit. The play button.
Taste the anchor.
Now this can also be controlled by a foot switch. If you have just a standard foot switch, you can plug it into the back of the unit, and that will allow you to play and stop via the foot switch. You set this from the utility button, system, and foot switch, and you either have the choice of play, stop, or punch in and punch out. So now if we press that, it controls the playback. Pressing forward and rewind will advance and retreat the song in 1 second increments. If you want to have more precise control, you put the cursor under either your hours, minutes and seconds, and then use the time dial to select whatever time you want. So you can advance in minutes, hours, seconds, frames, or even subframes. You can also control the location via the markers. If you put the cursor under the marker number, you can then scroll through the available markers. The name is also displayed there. So for instance, if we wanted to jump to the first verse, you just scroll till it says verse or marker number 2 and press play.
My fear is lost.
If you wanted to go say to the bridge, you scroll through till you see bridge or number 6.
Here I lay cold and poor.
You can also use the marker search buttons here on the left, which allow you to flick through the various markers set. You can have up to 100 markers per song. You can see by the light here that loop phrase is active. That means that the drums that are playing are via loop phrases or samples. If you press the track type select button, you can also get confirmation of that it's set to loop phrases. The built-in drums are not used by default on this song, but they have been set up so that you can turn them on if you wish. Now if we have a look at that, we can do that by going into the track type select button and changing the track 15 and 16 setting from audio to drums. Now you'll see the light has come on to indicate that the built-in drums are active. Now we'll turn down the loop phrases because that's the default drums, and then we'll have a listen to what that sounds like. Now we need to make sure that we're in arrangement mode, so the button is lit so that the song will follow a set arrangement, and you can see here that both the drums and loops are set up in the arrangement for this song. So if we press play, you can hear that that's the built-in drums as opposed to the loops.
This time it's real. Can't break the line that pulls me in.
On the bottom of the faders, you've got the track buttons. This is where you can determine if there is audio on the tracks. A green light indicates that there is audio on this particular V track. If you set the V track to a track where there's no audio, you'll see that light turns off. You can mute any of the tracks using the track mute button. If you hold down the mute button and then press the track, it will flash indicating that it is currently muted, which is effectively the same as just dropping the fader to 0. You can reverse that by holding the mute button down again and pressing the track. Unfortunately, there is no solo button on the BR1600, but you can very quickly turn all of the tracks off by holding the mute button and just dragging across all of the buttons and then just switching on whichever one you want to solo. Now the mute button does not work on any track that doesn't contain audio, so your loop phrases, your built-in bass and your built-in drums won't be able to be muted with the track mute button. That covers the basics of song navigation and V-Tracks. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.